Welcome to the Arena Decklist Podcast. I'm Jerry Thompson, joined by Brian Gottlieb, and we have an interesting show today. I am a little under the weather because the heat does not work in my house, and so I have a little bit of a sore throat. And because the heat does not work, I have a fan going that Brian tells me is of light noise quality. And I guess, Brian, you turned yours off, but I thought we were going to be in solidarity where it's like, look, we're just running our heaters today. Deal with it.
I was on board with the just purposefully reduced quality show, but I just got a little warm. So I'm sorry I didn't stand in solidarity with you as we both ran our heaters and annoyed our listeners. Although if you didn't say anything, I would put a large bet on no one even noticing.
Maybe. It's one of those things where if someone does notice, I think it's nice for me to say, like, hey, I know that this is probably a bad thing and I should not be doing it, but like, here's the reason why, you know? But I also know that there's probably a large subsection of people who probably could not hear it. And now that I pointed it out, it is all that they can hear.
Just going to be listening to it the entire time. Yeah, I mean, we do generally try to care about audio quality and things like that to make the listening experience as smooth and joyous as possible. But Jerry's cold, damn it, and I want him to be warm. I know how much he suffered, and he has been suffering, by the way, for months now, making this podcast in the cold. And, I think you got frostbite for a little while in your office, right?
It wasn't like frostbite, but my feet were definitely cold for multiple days.
Yeah, if I get the chance to have a friendly chat with your landlord, it will probably be an interesting one. But I'm not sure that's ever going to actually come up. But
by all means, anyone is encouraged to have whatever sort of chat with my landlord that they want. I just got a piece of mail today that said that they're increasing my rent.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Why not?
For no reason, even though it's like, my house has not had heat or AC for 6 months. And refused to fix it.
Look, they are just trying to run a legitimate business out here. If you want them to do things like provide a livable space for you, that seems unfair. How are they going to extract maximum profit if they have to go ahead and provide you the basic necessities of life, such as heat?
They're providing a service, Brian.
Yeah.
You see.
Well provided, too.
Renting out a house for someone who, I don't know, like I could afford to buy a house, but I certainly wouldn't want to buy this house. Instead, I'm just paying someone else's mortgage for no real reason.
Yeah, very silly. I mean, and it's funny because I was like for years a very mobile person and it wasn't so much that I couldn't get a house. It just didn't make a lot of sense in terms of timing, and nothing ever felt permanent enough. And I was following my career. My wife was following her career, and it just didn't make sense for us. But the consequence of that,
it played out that way though, too.
For sure. And it mostly was okay, except the consequence is you just make someone else rich I moved out of my parents' house when I was 17. And then I paid rent until this year, and I'm turning 40 next year. So you're talking 20 plus years of just paying someone else's mortgage. It's very silly, very frustrating. And I wish houses had a little bit more liquidity, moved around a little bit more, and we all didn't have to fight for, again, one of the basic human necessities, housing.
Or, kind of an out there idea, but like the houses that sit there empty could
maybe use them.
Yeah, could maybe just be given to someone who doesn't have a house. But
let me tell you about the free. No, never.
Whatever. Anyway, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everyone. A great way to open the show. There was something else I was gonna say. I don't know. Maybe we should just talk about Magic Online.
Sure. Weird news coming out of Magic Online today as we record this. And I would say it's a bit of a slow news week. There's not much to be said in terms of competitive Magic right now. Like, I would love a real big alchemy tournament to talk about. Like, you'd think some kind of event highlighting the format and kicking it off, put together by Wizards, would have been a cool way to give us something to talk about.
Dude, one of the biggest frustrations with organized play is the scheduling and timing.
Yep.
The worlds that I sat out of is like the prime example of it, where I posted my thing And a lot of folks' response was, "Oh, I didn't know Worlds was happening," and it was because it was like the end of a dead format. We already had like the full spoiler for the next set, and Standard was rotating or something. It was like just a comical mix up of everything, where no one knew about the tournament because they didn't advertise it, and even if they did advertise it, no one would watch it because the Standard format was completely irrelevant. It was literally the last tournament in that format, and that's how like the championships have been lately. And it's just like, come on, we used to be so good at this.
Yeah, and I sort of get the argument that like this isn't as important anymore. That's true. It's not as important, but there's moments where it's super important.
It's not that important, but it doesn't mean that you just put it on the worst possible weekend, or you put like whatever Pro Tour equivalent event is the same weekend as the qualifier event, so the people playing in PTQs can't watch the pro level event. Or you should do the pro event first to get people interested in watching it, because they will want to learn from that tournament to then put forth towards their PTQs the next week.
Yeah, that's what we did. We did it for years. We're not telling anyone something they don't know, but no, there wasn't anything like that this week, and it's tough because I continue to enjoy Alchemy. I'm having a good time, and I wish there was some competition we could discuss, but we don't really have that yet. Hopefully, come back soon. We'll be able to do that. Probably be an endless preview season, but instead we're going to talk about some of these slow news items. We'll talk about some non-Magic stuff, I think, because
hopefully.
What else are we going to do? And if this doesn't sound like it's for you, take a week off. That's cool. We're down with that. Pop off, and you can come back next week, and we'll probably be back in deck lists or new Magic cards or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. Take a week off. We almost did.
Discussed it, but we thought we had to spread all of this holiday cheer we have inside of us and make sure it doesn't go to waste just in our cold, dark hearts. It has to go out there to the world and be embraced.
All right. I'm going to look at the copy from this announcement so we can get it straight here.
Yeah, I know the gist of what has happened, but I think having some specificity in how they phrased it is important, because I think the biggest thing about this news item is not so much what's happening. It's clear what's happening. It's interpreting what's happening and why it's happening, what it means for the future of Magic Online.
So let me preface by saying that Magic Online was not originally run by Wizards themselves.
Yeah, Leaping Lizard was the first ones, I think. And they went on to do something really interesting. Do you know what they went on to do?
Are they NFT grifters?
No, I don't think that's their thing.
It just seems like a very, blossoming space.
Yeah, no, definitely hot right now. But I think, I hope I don't have this wrong. I think something about Leaping Lizards went on to have a lot to do with Skyrim, Elder Scrolls, Morrowind stuff. And maybe I'm like crossing lines up and that's not correct. So you can do a quick fact check on me there. I hear some typing going on. Hopefully you're going to clear that up.
It's Leaping Lizards is a board game about fast moving reptiles.
No, that's not the one I'm looking for.
Okay. This is a pro tip for all you folks out there who may be making game studios or something. SEO is important.
We learned that the hard way.
Yes. Let's just do Elder Scrolls. Sleeping Lizards, Elder Scrolls.
Anything there? Yeah, now that I Google more, I'm concerned I just made this up entirely, and this actually has nothing to do with it. There is some link. I promise there's something interesting about Leaping Lizard and what people involved with Leaping Lizard went on to do. If anyone knows, I would like you to come to me and tell me exactly what it is, because I'm not finding it when I go to look on the internet right now. Although God. I did find the little logo, and I remember the little logo from logging onto Magic Online, so that's very exciting.
Oh, I think I got it.
You got it?
Yeah, there is something about Morrowind.
Okay, good. So I'm not a complete clown. Because when I looked at the list, like I found a site summing up what they did, and the list of credits are Sim Farm in 1993, Centipede in 1998, Monopoly Casino in 1999, Magic the Gathering Online in 2002, and then Bicycle Casino in 2004, and that's it. Nothing else. So I know there's more to it than that.
All that shows up in this article is about a person who used to work at Leaping Lizard, now working at Bethesda.
Okay. Maybe I just read this interview or something. I don't know. Anyway. Magic Online.
Yeah. So at some point, I think it was version 3, but I could be wrong. It could have been version 2, where they wrested control back from Leaping Lizard and was like, we're going to do this all in-house. And it was fine. So now, from the news article on Daily MTG, big change for next year and beyond is that Wizards of the Coast will be partnering with Daybreak Games to develop and publish Magic Online. Daybreak Games is a leading global publisher and developer of multiplayer online games and has a proven track record of supporting and growing live service games. So on the outset, it's like, they're outsourcing this thing. This could be like a big deal or mean a lot of things. And in reality, this is like something that they've already done, but like for different reasons. And then, Brian, I think you have more experience or understanding of this company, Daybreak Games. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I did some research today. It's not like I have a huge amount of experience with them, but basically, I would say they lean towards not sunsetting is not the right word. I would say minimal effort and games which are not like super active development, and definitely not the forefront of the cultural experience, taking over things like PlanetSide, and there's definitely a bunch of games, no doubt, ton of experience taking over a bunch of games that you have heard of, and in some instances growing the communities of those games by doing some really good projects. EverQuest is another one I believe that they're like kind of the stewards of.
That's the one I was going to bring up. Y'all want to know why EverQuest has been running for, I don't know, 30 years or however long it's been, is because this company does it. And it's like, isn't that game super old? Yup. Has it gotten any updates? Nope, not really.
But it's there.
It's there. And Daybreak is the org that continues to keep that game running.
So what does that mean for Magic the Gathering Online? Here is what I would argue. Magic the Gathering Online was already in the state of, we're just keeping this thing running.
Dude, that was my argument. What do you...
I've stolen it. I'm sorry. Because it's correct. I mean, it's just correct. Like, the obviously has not been a priority, but it still makes money. There's still a very small but dedicated subset of players who play a lot of Magic Online. And if you want my opinion, Magic Online is probably the best way to play competitive Magic over the internet. Still.
Hands down.
So, but that's me, someone who has 20 plus years invested in Magic already. What is the better program for Wizards of the Coast to sell as a product? It's Arena, unquestionably. You can't even, you can't undo the nonsense that has been built into the Magic Online platform at this point. And they're not going to reboot the whole thing. And it's just about keeping it afloat, milking out that last little bit of profit. And that doesn't mean this has to be a bad thing. If this external studio can do a really good job in the, minimal update mode, and they are insisting that they're not sunsetting anything. They're still bringing new sets and everything to Magic Online. So basically, at least what we are getting now, it feels like we will continue to get in the future. So I think this is pretty neutral news on the whole. I just have seen people get both excited or despondent about it. And I think this is just pretty much status quo. I don't see a lot here.
Yeah, so sunsetting is the term I saw being thrown around, and that is not what this company does because, I don't know their track record or whatever, but for things like EverQuest specifically, they keep the game running for a very long time, right? They're not trying to like take it over to shut it down because they're getting paid by Wizards to do this, right? So why would they want to do that? They want to keep Magic Online alive. And what does that mean? Like, is it possible that they try and do some things to like fix up the client and remove some of like the issues and problems that Magic Online has had? Possibly. I don't know. I feel like those things could be good, but
well, they mentioned multiplayer as a priority in this announcement article. So, I mean, that would be a a huge upgrade to Magic Online. If you had an actual platform where people could play and enjoy Commander, that's a breakthrough, like game changing.
You technically can play 4-player Commander and have been able to for a long time, but if there are added features to that, then yes, that is awesome.
Yep. Yeah, it is there in the barest sense of the word, not really an enjoyable experience. I've tried it. I've played multiplayer Magic Online. It definitely needs work, but if you nailed that, if that was your priority, it could be a real game changer for Magic Online for sure.
It could. And I don't know, there's just so many things with Magic Online that could be done a lot better. I mean, just for example, like basically as soon as Arena came out, or once they even started talking about Arena, a lot of the focus shifted off of Magic Online. Not that they ever had a ton of focus there anyway, but as far as like trying to direct players to go play on that platform, like that stuff doesn't exist right now. And, you know, in same terms as them like growing these other MMOs and stuff like that, it's like they had to have like a plan and a way to do that. And I hope that some of that gets followed through with Magic Online as well.
Always possible. I have heard good things from some communities about the work that the studio has done. And not directly, obviously, but in my research, it seems like they have moved some things forward. They have listened to player bases about what they want and provided those things. So here's hoping. I don't think you could have less of a focus on the program than there currently is. So if you do something, even a little thing cool with this opportunity, it's going to be a net positive.
Yeah, Magic Online has been in this state for the last 5 years or so, if not more. So I don't think things are really going to change all that much. And if they do change, it would likely be for the better, or maybe they try some stuff out, it doesn't work, but they would almost certainly listen to community feedback. And in the meantime, I don't know, maybe you start seeing like Magic Online ads, right? Or something.
Sure. It's possible. And if like the fear is, oh, what if this company isn't good at like putting new sets online? Well, have you played any of the sets like the days they come out on Magic Online recently? It just doesn't work half the time. And like Limited is a disaster for the first week, every single new set, because one card breaks something else. And some of the bugs that you come across at this stage of Spaghetti Code they're hilarious, and they come every single set. And some of them persist for a very long period of time. So again, I just don't think things can get worse.
Random cards have to get banned in Pauper and, you know.
Yeah, keep the player base on its toes.
All sorts of weird stuff happens. But yeah, I don't think that this is this bad. And I also don't think that this should come as a surprise. Like, obviously, again, a lot of resources were shifted off of Magic Online onto Arena. And maybe, you know, this frees up some more resources for Arena. So that should be cool too. Maybe. Who knows? And I hope this company handles it well. I would imagine that they would not take on something that they can't handle as far as, you know, coding individual cards and stuff like that. I mean, it is very much like its own thing, right? Like Magic's weird.
It is, but it also does seem like they capped a lot of the folks who are currently working on the product. So
yeah, true. So yeah, I don't know. I love Magic Online, man. I don't play it a ton now, but I also just don't play a ton of Magic now. But I have very, very fond memories of just jamming Magic Online like 6 to 8 hours a day. And it helped me grow so much as a player. And there are a lot of like really good competitive opportunities for Magic Online, whether it was just like PTQs or like the weekly challenges that happen all the time. Qualifying for the mocks was awesome. You know, all of these things that Arena currently doesn't have, and Magic Online still does. It's just the problem is like you're not qualifying for a pro tour or like a real mocks or whatever. It's like a mocks that's, you know, being broadcasted out of someone's basement, and a pro tour that's a set championship played on Arena, which is not the same thing. So
yeah, a lot of the infrastructure has crumbled around Magic Online, and to no fault of Magic Online. In terms of the importance of Magic Online, both in the broader picture and to myself, I can say authoritatively, there's no way I'm here right now without Magic Online. Like, it was the reason I came back to Magic. It was done and dusted for me. I don't think I would have busted the cards back out. I really don't. My life was just in such a different place, and it wasn't it wasn't headed in a direction where Magic would have lined up again. And then finding out about Magic Online changed all of that. It brought me back into the fold and made me interested in the competitive scene. And I owe so much of what my next 20 years after the release of Magic Online looked like to Magic Online. So it's kind of incredible. And I also think in the broader sense, when you see these lists, these retrospectives of like the most important video games ever made, for better or worse, Magic Online deserves to be near the very top of all of those lists. And it just doesn't have that kind of significance in the broader video game world. And people don't regard it that way. But so many things that this program was the first to do are just that's how the industry works now. Like the entire gacha game industry is somewhat founded on Magic Online. If you want to talk about NFT grifting, like in some ways, the digital objects created by Magic Online were the first things that like got value assigned. Maybe not the first thing. That's probably overdramatic. Certainly these things had happened on the internet before, but one of the first real mainstream adoptions of the kind of this digital good has real world worth. And thinking back to the announcement that, oh, these digital Magic cards are going to still cost $4 a pack, and everyone's mind being blown. Like it seemed unfathomable that you could sell something that wasn't real for $4 a pack. And how quaint and just like good-hearted does that look now compared to where the world is at and what they are selling digital objects for at this point in time?
Well, to be fair, I think that they probably could have come up with a better business model and gotten more players, but
maybe true. I'm not trying to say it did everything correctly. I'm not even trying to say its net effect on the industry of games as a whole is positive. I just think it's the most important release of the last 20 years, maybe.
It was certainly proof of concept of a lot of stuff where it's like, yeah, maybe this isn't the best thing, but like this can work.
Yeah. And it just deserves a lot more respect than it gets in the broader like gaming circles, I think.
Misplaced Ginger had a tweet at some point where he did the math on like how much time he spent on Magic Online, and it was like, I don't know, a quarter of his life or half his life or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers, but there was definitely a period of time in my life where it would have been a significant portion of my life too. And it's like, how do you get so good at something? Well, it is by doing it a lot and doing it against good competition. And Magic Online absolutely is how I got better. Straight up.
Just from a pure rep standpoint. I mean, how would you have ever gotten in that many reps without Magic Online?
Yeah, I mean, it was slow going for sure until then, because it was like I would go to F&M, play 4 rounds, maybe like play some games with friends in the week or whatever. But like, just being able to play, whatever draft format or PTQ format was coming up just nonstop. And I cannot stress enough that it was like, very much like the very, very enfranchised people who were on it too. There wasn't a whole lot of like casual audience because of the economy and like how quickly you would just get eaten up. So it was like, that was an important aspect of it. And I don't get that on Arena because like I play on Arena and I don't know like my opponent's investment really. Yep. And just, judging from like the way a lot of the games go, it's like probably not very high for a random opponent. So
yeah, and there were real dollar swings at stake on Magic Online. Like you had a bad day drafting on Magic Online, you're down $100, $200. Yeah. That's significant money. Like there were stakes. And again, for better or worse, those stakes were part of what I craved at the age when I found Magic Online. One of the things that's interesting about my background is I obviously played poker for a living for a few years during the poker boom. And it was the first time in my life I ever made substantial money where I like actually had money to spend and felt fairly comfortable. But also while I was building that substantial money and like rising through the ranks, I routinely had to put literally my entire net worth on the line to try and make a few bucks. Like, I have $200 in my pocket. That's all the money I have in the world. And I'm sitting down at this 1-3 game hoping that I can make enough to pay rent. And that was just my reality. And it's created this weird thing where if the stakes aren't that high, gambling just like doesn't do it for me anymore. And that sounds horrible, but it's true. Like I need to have kind of like my life on the line. Otherwise I just don't get the same feel from gambling. That's why I don't really gamble, because I'm not going to go ahead and put my net worth presently on the line, because that's scary. And I spent a lot of time building that. Whereas before it was the $200 I was able to scrape together from bussing tables or whatever.
Yeah, I paid my rent with Magic Online for years. Not like a ton of years or whatever, maybe like 2 or 3 total, but
yep. So you were in that struggle.
I was, absolutely. And a lot of it was about volume. And I don't know, like these days, this was more true like back in the day, where it was like I loved just like building the best version of the best deck and then just like going through the queues over and over and over again. And I was at a point where I like wasn't learning anything, but I was just like doing it to beat people.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like a portion of time where I had to do that. I couldn't be like, oh, I want to learn things, because it was my rent on the line. It was very much my job. So I had to do that, just like, play Jund or whatever the best deck was and just beat up a bunch of people and go from there. Whereas like now I can't do that. I can't just like beat up on people for funsies. It just doesn't work. Like if I'm playing Magic, I have to be learning something. So if there were stakes, like relevant stakes worth playing for, that would be cool. But even like the challenges or like the PTQs, I'm never like, oh, just copy paste like whatever won the last tournament. It's like I'm trying to learn something, or I'm trying something experimental in my deck and like trying to learn something. And then if I happen to do well or whatever, cool. But yeah, I just can't like jam the best deck for fun anymore.
No, it's easy to romanticize these situations. Like there is something that was special about it, but it was also kind of nightmarish at the same time. And like this weird hellscape that put too much pressure on the people participating and probably like was not what the game was designed to do. And sort of like a bastardized interpretation of
yes and no.
the whole space.
I mean, they made the stuff worth money for a reason, right? And they made tickets transferable for a reason.
Yeah. I'm just not sure like it was an entirely well thought out reason. Like I don't think they thought about all the implications of it.
Dude, the first payouts, the first payouts were absurd.
Huge. They were huge, yes.
It was like you win like a weekly challenge or whatever, and you get like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 boxes of digital Magic cards or whatever. And
to say nothing that like the base level was 8-4 for a lot of the time, but I think it was closer to 12-6 like at the outset.
Yeah. No, so everything was a lot higher, and then they just scaled it down to the like exact point where people would still play. Like the value is still good enough to keep going, but it used to be so much better. And I just remember back in the day, it's like, man, Fact or Fiction is 20 tickets. Like I'm not going to play Psychotog, even though it's the best deck, because I'm not going to like put $100 on the Magic Online or whatever,
Right.
Like we had to grind until we had a good deck.
Yep. Yeah. My intro to Magic Online started with Mono Black Control, playing Frozen Shade over Nantuko Husk, because I just didn't have the money to have the 2 mana black pumpable creature as opposed to the 3 mana black pumpable creature, and eventually won enough to get there despite only having the more inferior version of the deck.
It was still an Nantuko Shade.
Nantuko Shade? Yes, you're right. Nantuko Shade versus Frozen Shade. Yes.
But yeah. No, I feel you. I mean, I got to a point where eventually I had like all the decks and stuff, and a lot of that came from drafting, and it's like trying to build a collection drafting now is like good luck. Right?
Yeah, definitely a battle. So this kind of like is an interesting question that I would pose to you. Now you make your living through Magic still to this day. You write.
Different sorts, less of a grind, less of am I going to be able to eat tonight if I don't top 8 this premier event or whatever? But yeah.
Okay. But let's say theoretical world, there is a platform that offers Magic being played at the type of stakes, which would allow you to maintain basically your lifestyle as it is now. So a similar income to what you're making now, but instead of, doing the writing thing, doing the podcasting thing, it's just strictly game, win your games, get paid. Does that interest you at all? Like, is there something there where you hear about that and you're like, maybe I would do that? Is it just the absence of like that actual dollars in your pocket that is keeping you away from diving in like that? Or is it just something you've moved past?
So I will say that like all the games that I play now that are not Magic, I definitely still have like the killer instinct type of thing where I min max, I play a lot. I try to do everything correctly. I try to like learn and be as good at the game as I possibly can because those things are enjoyable to me. And for Magic, it is different because of like trying to make content versus like trying to win in tournaments.
Yeah.
So if I could, I mean, it's also weird because it's like the investment for writing an article a week and doing a podcast a week is much lower. It's like lower opportunity cost, higher reward, monetary reward than any amount of like grinding for dollars would be.
Mm-hmm.
And I do enjoy it. I enjoy talking about the game, and there's a bunch of games I play now that I would love to talk to someone about, but I just like don't really know anyone who also wants to have that conversation who is like willing to take it as seriously as I am.
Right. Yeah, it's tough to find aligned interests when it comes to a game, especially when they're like unique games where I think in your case, there's established metagames that people default to, and you are about creating those metagames, not defaulting to them. And it's hard to find like minds in a lot of those spaces.
Yeah. But I don't know. I enjoy what I do so much that I would still continue to want to do some part of it, even if I were just grinding and that were like the best thing to be doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, if there were stakes for any sort of Magic thing, I am definitely more interested now than I would be for just like playing on Arena Ladder, because like Arena Ladder, it has a ton of problems, obviously, but like the thing that gets me is that it's just like most of my opponents are not going to be bringing like the same like heat and knowledge and compassion and stuff like that I would want to bring to any given match, and there's just like nothing at stake. So it all just feels very pointless, like more than pointless to me. So it doesn't get me fired up, but it's like playing like a league on Magic Online. It does still, it does feel like it matters. It's just like the amount that you get from it just doesn't do anything for me.
Yep. Okay. That all tracks. I think for my part, a huge percentage of my motivation in Magic was to get to the point where I was able to do what I do now. I just wanted to be able to share my thoughts about the game. I wanted to have an audience for those thoughts. And I wanted to, like you said, have like-minded individuals to like have these conversations with. And I have that now. I wouldn't really give it up for anything. And I couldn't envision myself ever going back to like, I need to win these matches of Magic, otherwise my head will explode. Like it's just not in my heart anymore. And it's funny. I think that like there's moments where I fall into it. Like if I go back to the launch of Arena and playing like the Fandom Legends stuff, there was moments where that fire came back to me and it felt really good. And I was really happy to be doing it. But I also cannot do it like snap my fingers. I'm in that mode now.
Same.
For instance, like I played the SCG Invitational a few months ago. I didn't care. I just didn't. Like it didn't matter to me. I was more concerned with like making sure my opponents were having a good time than I was with, am I going to win this tournament? And you need that. You just need to have that hunger. It doesn't mean you have to be like nasty or mean or like ruthless. That's not what I'm saying. It's that you have to want to win. And if you don't have that, it's just not going to manifest.
I've mentioned this before, and I've certainly talked to my friends about this to some degree, but like if I could play anonymously, it would make it way more likely that I would be willing to play in some of those events.
Sure. I understand that as well. So it's an interesting conundrum for a very, very mature game. And we certainly have a unique relationship with it at this point. And I don't know how much other people like relate to this type of stuff. I think there's a handful of people out there who are like, yes, I get this. But it's hard when you just look at this as like the game you play for fun. None of this stuff really makes any sense.
Yeah, I think like you can't turn on the fire, killer instinct, whatever you want to call it. And I think when I was younger, it it gave me something to care about. Whereas now I care more about things that quote unquote matter, you know? So it's like, I find it difficult to care about like a match of Magic as much as something that like actually impacts the world. Whereas before, like my world was much smaller. Like I wasn't necessarily thinking about all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. It like I definitely needed that at that time in my life, and I need it less now. But I don't know. It is weird where the content creator aspect of things has made it so that it's just like kind of pointless for me to care about like winning an individual match versus like, okay, well, I need to do this thing
what did
to
you
learn. Yeah.
Yes.
So that I can talk about it this week or whatever. Whereas in the other games, I feel like I play enough and am learning and like can just focus on that. So I do that to the best of my ability. But like I also feel like I could just make like dope content for those games. It's just like the audience is not necessarily there, or the audience is already like very saturated or whatever, the market's saturated. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, something about like what individuals are trying to get out of a game. I think Magic did a good job of bringing a lot of very like-minded individuals together.
Yeah.
And other games, I'm not going to say no game does that. Certainly there are games that do that very well. But when I think of the other games that I play, I don't get that same sense.
You get a wide range of responses, right? And I think that that's just like gaming being not necessarily more accessible, but like definitely more socially accepted or encouraged now. And you're just getting like a broader spectrum versus the way to play Magic before was like hardcore like PTQ grinding, which is how you got all those like-minded people together. But the Magic experience now is certainly very different too. If you just interact with like any given random Magic player, right? Like everyone is going to have like a different range of the way they want to experience the game and experiences they've had and what they want to talk about and so on.
For sure. The sociology of Magic is so interesting to me. It might actually be the topic that interests me the most at this point about the game. Just those broad, big picture things and how we all have chosen to engage with this game. And it's fascinating. I could literally talk about it for hours, and I often do. So I will let you lead this conversation where you want. Otherwise, I'll keep us here all day and we'll just be talking about these things that, again, I'm not sure how many people care when we talk about this stuff, but it is fascinating to me.
I think at the end of the day, Magic Online is important because you give someone a digital way to play things like Modern and Legacy and Vintage, and that needs to stick around.
Especially now. I mean, it's so important right now.
Yeah, of course. So I hope that Daybreak does a good job with it. If anyone who works for that company is listening somehow randomly and, you know, wants a line into community members who would be able to give good feedback, I feel like I am a pretty good person for that. I can either do it myself or point you in the right direction. I care about this product. I care about how it is handled, even though I might not play as much as I used to, you know? So throwing that out there. But yeah, Brian, you fed any good goats lately?
I have been feeding a very good goat. If you have seen my Twitter page, you certainly know this and have seen the best goat. Would you like to guess the goat's name? I think you should just put out the first guess that comes to your mind.
I mean, the first guess that came to mind was Goatsy, but
Goatsy.
Look, man,
what a strange goat name.
No, you remember the really bad thing on the internet back in the day?
No.
Okay.
No, which really bad thing on the internet?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. There are going to be some people who are probably going to try and like rickroll you into clicking this link. Don't do it.
All right. I'm not clicking anything for the next week. My neighbor's goat's name is Billy.
Okay. That's a good one.
Yeah. Textbook goat name.
Yeah. The other thing is not good. So yeah, just forget about that.
Sounds good. We will ignore that. Yeah, I've just been, feeding the goats lately. I would like to get my own goats. I did some research a while ago, was learning about Nigerian dwarf goats.
Okay.
Which are just these really cool, smaller goats. And they have a nice milk yield. So you can make goat cheese and things like that with them. I don't think I want to get female goats because I don't want the responsibility of having to milk them all the time. I kind of just want to hang out with them. But yeah, I think that someday I will have my own goats and I won't have to go visit my neighbors all the time. But they have been great at indulging my desire to occasionally pet a goat and let me come down and feed Billy regularly. So that's been very nice.
Billy seems very nice. How, like, I was under the impression that you were just kind of like moving into the boonies, but then not to like, dox you or whatever, but it's like, the recent video, or not the most recent one, but the one where your wife is, walking down the street towards the goat or whatever. It looks like, assuming that you were taking that video from your property or whatever, that it's like, your neighbors are pretty close.
Yeah, that video is taken from my living room window.
Okay.
And essentially, we're at the end of a private road. We're the last house on a private road. And so if you go down the private road, there's 4 neighbors who also live on the private road. And my property has like a wood line around it. So when the trees are full, you cannot see any other property. You basically like go to the end of the private road. That's where my gate is. You come through it, and that's where my house is.
Okay.
So it feels very isolated, but I have 4 neighbors within walking distance. And
cool.
So yeah, it's not. And also once you actually get to the end of the private road, it's not a main road. That doesn't really, it's a main country road is the best way to describe it. And so you drive 10 minutes down that road in one direction, you're at a Walmart. So it's maybe not as isolated as it seems, given how much nature there is present. But that's why I love it so much. It's a great mix of being like feeling very isolated, but also close enough where I can like go get Taco Bell if I have to. You know what I mean?
You know how we're going to have our fans on to disrupt our listeners?
Yeah.
Do you know that your phone's blowing up right now?
No, I didn't know that.
Okay.
I understand. I'm a very popular person, so I'll just have to turn that off. So
it's just people tweeting like raccoons and goats at you.
It was actually my alert going off because my wife is currently Christmas shopping while I record this, and it's letting me know what purchases she's been making. Yeah. So it's a very expensive podcast for me thus far. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, man. I was just kind of under the impression, or at least this is like my Brian headcanon, that you just lived in a cabin in the woods like 100 miles from everyone.
No, I can understand where you get that impression from. And that's the thing, is sometimes it sort of feels like it. And it can be very isolated and country-ish. And it's a big property too. And, it's got the weird features like the pond and the big barn. So it's not what you would expect, given that I do have neighbors within close proximity.
So I know that you're a general animal lover, and I don't know, man. You're talking about like maybe getting some goats, but like I felt like there would maybe be some other animals that you would get before goats.
Well, so
what's your plan here?
If it were to go my wife's way, and it will, certainly, I promise you the end result is it does, we will first get a horse before anything else.
Yep.
She is a lifelong, I want to say equestrionaut. That's definitely not the right word for it.
Equestrian?
Yeah, but equestrian is like a specific type of horse.
Okay.
And she did do that. She did hunter jumper, if I have any horse fans out there listening right now, but has since moved on to dressage, I believe is the term for how she rides now.
That sounds so pretentious. I love it.
Oh, it is. It all is. It's a very silly thing, but she loves it. And she also competed for a long time. I've shared before on, I don't know if ever on this cast, but on other podcasts.
But does she still have the fire, Brian? Maybe
no,
you should
she
ask
doesn't.
her.
She doesn't have the fire anymore. And it's funny because like it's such a separate experience from Magic. It's a completely different world, but there's so many parallels we found about our experiences. And the bulk of her horse competing is before we met. It goes back to when she was like high school age, but she didn't go to high school. She was actually just full-time doing horse stuff back then, and then went and got her GED, went to community college, went to college, and now is super successful. So a really good, one of the best cases possible for you don't need a traditional education to succeed in very traditional spaces. I think she's a textbook example of that.
It's very true. Obviously, you need like structure in place to help you along. You need the right support or whatever. But
yes. Yep. Yeah, and she had that and was able to have a very unorthodox approach to education and is one of the smartest people I know now. But spent a bunch of time with horses, and first priority for her is getting back in the horse game, but that's not going to be on our property. That's going to be a horse boarded elsewhere. So that will certainly be the first animal that gets added to our menagerie.
Okay. Next
animal?
Yeah.
Man, that's a tough decision.
Right?
Here's where I am at with animals right now. I have my very senior dog, Kai, who is sadly probably coming towards the end of his life. He's almost 14 now, and he has a lot of good days still, but he has some tough ones. And I don't know what that's going to be like for me. He's been my closest companion for so long, and our whole relationship together, my wife and I, we've been together for his entire life now. Then we got him when we were together for we'd probably only been together 4 or 5 months at that point. We got a dog together. Not a great choice in most instances, but it worked out here. So I can't imagine not having him around. And I think I just need some time after that to sort of reflect on pet ownership and like what I can do going forward. I know this is kind of like a morose place to take this, but it's just where my head is at right now, where I want to make sure my main priority is like making sure the end of his life is super happy, super stress-free, and he's super well taken care of.
Yeah. Kai's a good boy. He deserves it.
Very good boy. And once I pass that bridge, then I'll start thinking more about like what the next animal will be. It could be I just lose my mind and like go rescue every dog I could find. And I also like the idea of just like inviting animals onto my property, which is starting to become problematic because I have this muskrat family living in my pond right now. And they're going to town on the walls of my pond, and it's just like pouring into my neighbor's yard at this point. So, yeah, we might have to do something, find some safe way to rehome these muskrats. But I love the idea of just like animals coming and going to my property. I had the deer I shared some pictures of for a while that was here quite often. A bunch of squirrels, which my wife is very excited about, including a red squirrel, which is a big deal for her. So, yeah, I will not be making any animal purchases, I don't think, until Kai's situation is sorted out, and just kind of appreciating the animals around me for now.
I think that since you have like such a wide range of love for animals that, you talked about the coming and going thing, I think that you would be a very good foster home.
We've talked about that. And I do think that would be something that I would be really happy to do. Again, not while Kai's around, just because I don't want that stress in his life.
Of course.
But I think, getting dogs resituated and ready to go to a new home, I could see myself being very happy doing that. And also it bodes well in terms of like, assuming the world ever gets back to a normal state, we love traveling. And it's hard when you have a dog. It used to be my parents could come and take care of Kai, but that got harder as he got older and required more specific care. So having some of that flexibility and still having a dog in my life because I was just fostering. And then I know like, all right, foster period's over now. Before we take another one, we could go do this trip.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool to me.
Yeah. I can't even, like, there was a point where I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe, in 2021, this is like early 2020 me thinking like, oh, maybe I could go do this. And then now I'm just like, that stuff's all off the table. I just can't.
Yeah. I'm just here forever.
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
So I don't know. It is weird to even think about it because I was at that place like a few different times over the last couple of years. Yep. And it's just like always ended in disappointment and disaster. So now I'm just not even thinking about it until, maybe stuff actually does get better. Who knows? But
I understand. I don't fault you for not setting yourself up for disappointment again.
Yep. But we're talking like years down the line probably. So I do think that makes sense.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is that I've kind of wanted, this sounds more like mystical and crunchy than I actually am, but I kind of wanted the universe to just like tell me what my next animal would be. And I don't mean like some mythical sign. I just mean like,
no,
I feel like
you get an opportunity.
I'm going to encounter an animal who like needs my help.
Yeah.
And that should be the next animal I take care of. And, maybe it's a cow, maybe it's a baby raccoon I find outside. I mean, that's the dream scenario. Let's be real. But whatever it is, that will probably be my next step.
No, that's legit. I like that. It's just weird because even if you are maybe relying on that, it's like you encounter your neighbor's goat and you have access to this goat and you have bowls full of fruit to feed it or whatever.
Yep.
And now you're like researching into like maybe getting a goat for yourself. And it's like, I mean, I guess you could argue that that falls under the sign or whatever, but it mostly doesn't in my mind.
That is true. And that's maybe why I haven't pulled the trigger. I mean, maybe what will happen is that my neighbor will be like, you sure come down and see that goat a lot, and we don't really want it anymore. So you just want to take it onto your property. And
yeah, your neighbor's just like, this goat is a nightmare. Please take it from me. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it certainly probably doesn't help that it knows us now. And it just like every single time, even when we drive down the road, not just walk down the road, he just goes berserk, jumping up and down, making goat noises at us. So I wonder if it's causing problems for them. I hope they would tell us if it was causing problems, because we, of course, asked permission before we just like showed up and started feeding the goat one day.
Yeah, can you be less nice to my goat?
Well, it's weird though. I mean, like we have met our neighbors, but it's not like we're close with any of them. We've only been here for a little period of time, and someone just is on your property feeding your animal. I mean, if someone was here feeding Kai every day, I'd be like, well, like, what are you feeding him? Are you thinking about like his weight?
But what are your intentions with my dog?
Right. They were just like, yeah, just give the goat whatever you want. Like literally just bring down like, wheelbarrows full of weeds and he will happily eat them all. So,
okay.
Goat's not picky, turns out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how that impacts the goat health, but.
Well, that is why, if you saw the Twitter video, is a very wide variety of different fruits and vegetables we wanted to provide to the goat. We were concerned.
I saw that.
Yeah, we were concerned that maybe he was just eating too many weeds and needed a little bit more like flash in his life. So we did a little research about like what's good for goats, what they can eat. And that collection, well, first it was things I didn't use like in time. So I let kind of get old in my fridge, which I do routinely. And I'm happy that they are now going to a goat as opposed to just being wasted.
Yeah, for sure. And I was more so talking about your neighbor who's just like, yeah, just bring your trash down here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Goat will eat your trash. And it's like, dude, are you okay?
Well, they do love poison ivy. Like it's one of their favorite things to eat. Yeah. Yeah. They will eat poison ivy. It doesn't affect them negatively. And actually, one of the first conversations we had with the neighbor about the goat was like, we have a bunch of poison ivy around. And she's like, if you ever want to take the goat up to your property and just let him eat, he will.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then one day the goat just never went home, just stayed on your property.
Permanent resident, taking up, swim in the pond, relaxing over there. So.
Yeah, man. I think that you would do good with animals. I don't know, how the Kai situation is going to affect you, but I think no matter what, you're not going to be able to give up loving animals, or like,
right.
It's not going to bring you to have like a negative reaction towards them, I think. So
no, I don't think so either. It feels like more of just like a time thing and like a reflection thing more than anything else. What about you? How many more cats are on the docket, or is it just the 3 forever?
Well, like I said, some issues with my landlord, and I will likely be out of this place in the next few months, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
I have made some considerations as to like what it would take for me to stay in this place, and it's a lot, and maybe they cave to it, maybe they don't. If they do cave to it, I would be worried because I'm sure something else will go wrong.
Right. That's a good sign nothing's ever getting fixed.
And, moving's a pain in the ass, obviously. So I'm in a house right now, and I could look around for other houses, but it's like pretty dry here, actually. And I was looking into getting like a studio loft.
Okay.
And
that sounds cool.
Yeah. And I think it would be good. It's got a lot of space. I like having it be wide open. I don't necessarily like living in a building with other humans at times of a pandemic and all that. That doesn't sound great to me. But if I do that, then the odds of me picking up another cat are a lot less likely because, occasionally I've had some like cats come and go through my backyard and stuff. And
yep.
That's how I got my 3rd cat. Is I was just gonna TNR, trap neuter release her, and then part of that process is her healing in my house for a week, and then after that, I was like, "No, you're not leaving."
Right. Just stay forever.
Yeah, pretty similar to how the goat's going to end up staying on your property. But
probably.
There's a cat that was on my property for a while that now my neighbor has mostly been taking care of. So that's cool. And I saw that cat the other day again, and it was nice. It was still a good boy, good kitty.
That's good. I'm glad your neighborhood has formed a whole collective dedicated to taking care of all the cats out there.
Yeah.
Why are there so many cats out there, though? That has me a little concerned.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. So like he had a litter that was born in his backyard and basically grew up in a hollowed out tree trunk that he removed a couple months ago, actually. But like,
okay.
I feel like the cats were, like born in there, and that's just kind of like how they grew up, and they would get food from him, they'd get food from me, and then Pyrrha was the cat that I eventually took in because she was like the first one out of the litter that I was able to catch, because I was going to like TNR all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe this one is still from that litter.
Okay.
But I don't know what happened to the third one. I don't know what happened to their mom or anything, but I've also seen like a couple cats here and there, but they have not stuck around as much as these ones have. But I'm sure, that could change because I've seen cats like here and there. So who knows?
So now I clarified the ruralness of my home.
Yeah.
How rural are you that all these cats are present?
So I am like a 10-minute, like basically I think I mapped this out. It takes me like 8 minutes in reasonable traffic to get to my house, from my house to the Richmond Convention Center.
Okay. That is a landmark I know. So I can,
so
I can kind of vibe with where you're at.
Some of that is just like I go off of my road for maybe like half a mile, hit kind of a main road, take that road to the highway, and the highway has like an exit that brings you right to the convention center.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all pretty convenient. And I kind of like, planned for that to be the case back in the before times when I thought I would be hosting people in my house and taking them to tournaments at the convention center.
No, Richmond Convention Center is where I have gone to Magic tournaments more than any other place in the world over the last, 3 years or so. Since I lived in Seattle, that was the spot I always ended up in for some reason.
Yeah, I believe that. And I still have a spare bedroom for you. So,
I hope one day I can take advantage of that. Oh, it sounds like it'll now be in a loft as opposed to the spare bedroom that you presently have.
Yeah, less privacy, I think, in the loft, but it'll still be good. You just might have some cats jumping on you while you try and sleep.
That's no problem. I can adapt.
So I'm in the suburbs. I am definitely in an area where it's like, house fence kind of situation.
Yeah.
So there's tons of people around me, and my neighbor is super cool, and we both share a love of cats. I'm not like, I haven't talked to him that much because I haven't been outside, but said hi to him when I was moving in. We BS'd a couple times. He come let me know when a hit and run driver just completely obliterated my mailbox.
Okay.
And then like occasionally when I've seen him outside, I've like when I took Pyrrha in, I was like, hey, what's the deal with the cats, in your backyard? And he's just like, oh, I just feed them, whatever. And I was like, well, do you mind if I, try and take him in to get TNR? And he's like, oh yeah, man, absolutely do that. So
nice.
Super friendly, super good dude, and has like an indoor outdoor cat of his own that has also like spent some time in my yard. I've fed her a couple times, and
cat knows where to get an extra meal if it needs it. That's kind of like the cat I have on my property. I've come to the conclusion it's not a wild cat. It's just a cat who likes snacks.
Yeah. I mean, that's all cats. It's like, granted, like the first two cats I adopted, and I don't know like what their stories were, how they were treated or anything, but one of my cats is definitely just like, oh, you just fed me, I'm still starving, you never feed me, just definitely looks at me like he's never eaten a day in his life.
I am familiar with that ruse, that particular pet ruse.
So yeah, I don't know. It's weird, and it is possible that my army continues to grow. We'll see. I feel the same way as you, man. It's just like you see like an animal that that needs help, whose life could be made better. And it's like, I just feel like every fiber in my being, whereas like, I want to do something,
Yep.
but it's just so messed up because like, people go to like breeders before shelters in a lot of instances. I think that the narrative on that is kind of getting turned around for the good.
Yep. And they're actually, in a rare circumstance, there's some useful laws that are continuing to be passed that are actually, prohibiting puppy mills from existing and requiring all the animals in certain states to be rescued. So I am pleased with the progress that is slowly being made in that direction.
Yeah. And I don't know, just whenever I've gone to a shelter to adopt or like look at adopting or go with someone else or whatever, it's just like they're always full. And it just sucks. It's just like I want to just, I don't know, like, so growing up, like grandparents had a farm and just they had like a ton of stray cats for whatever reason. I think it was like very much just like the meal thing. It's like there was food on the farm, and then at some point when we finished dinner, it was like the stuff that did not make for good leftovers or whatever. If it was like, fat left off the ham or something, they would just like bring it out into a big dish and just like feed all the cats.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like at various times we would have like 20 cats on the farm, and then like those cats would have kittens and whatever. It's just like they never did
infinite cats. You had a perpetual cat machine, basically.
We did it. And thinking back on it now, it's like y'all definitely should have like TNR'd a lot of those cats. Yep. We would not have had this problem, but whatever. So I don't know. Just adopt if you can. Because
how about this? Here's what I would like to do to close out the show. It is the holiday season. Not big on asking for gifts, but if you actually sat through this entire episode of the Cat Talk podcast and enjoyed it and appreciated either this or anything else that we have been able to do over the past year, and you have a local animal shelter that either you frequent, of, and you think maybe could use a little bit of help this season, if you were to send me a picture of you going down there and giving them some food or even just a donation, nothing would make my holiday season better if you could do something like that. If I've ever brought any joy to your life and you are saying, man, I'd really like to get Brian something, or I'd like to get Jerry something for the holiday season, if you did this for me, nothing would make me happier.
Same.
And that
hold on. When I adopted my cats, they were like, oh, it's like, this much or whatever. And I was like, that's like really low. Like a lot of the times previous times when I adopted animals, it was like a little bit higher, so I'm just like, why is it so low? And they told me, and I was like, but y'all have like 20 cats here, pandemic starting, like obviously you need the help, whatever. So it's just like handed them a bunch of money, and she was like, this is too much. I'm just like, no, just, keep the rest, whatever.
Yep.
It is very, very helpful for sure. So yep. I share your sentiments. Please do that. That would be awesome. Or, just send us animal pics. I'm sure that those are also appreciated.
Hey, I certainly will never object to that. Always welcome.
Game.
Good luck.